Okay, my friends, this is going to be a very interesting discussion. I just signed up for this course, which is the University of Tokyo, UC Berkeley, Lawrence Berkeley Laboratory, and so forth, and wherever this place is. But it's deep about Big Bang to dark energy. How did everything start, and what's this thing about dark energy? Now, he's going to discuss the relationship between the Big Bang and the expansion of the universe, which I don't agree with any of that stuff. But I want to show you something that they don't have any clue about, and this is what they have to explain. Okay, my friends, I'm going to show you this in great detail, and I had just got attacked by somebody for showing this so many times. Don't attack me for this, because I'm going to show it 10,000 times. Until somebody pays attention to it. I haven't had one single question from anybody in academia, not a single one about any of my research, because it's so undeniable, and it topples their house of cards and their authority over all of the kids and putting them literally into debtor's prison. Okay, I'm sure you're aware of Google Earth, and here it is. We can go running around the planet looking at all the different things on the globe, and some of the things are gigantic mud fossils. And the thing that I want to have explained is how these creatures lived on this planet the way it is now. And I don't think it's possible. This is a dragon. It runs all the way across North Africa, all the way across North Africa. And I mean all the way. That's his head right there. All right? This is his red flaring eye. This is the flashy stuff they have on you see on the parades of all the dragons in China and all that places. Now, what about his neck? Let's go back out and look. There's his neck, runs all the way down, all the way down, all the way down, all the way down, and longer. This is just runoff here of dead, decaying bodily tissues. This is dragon scales, and they protect his dragon throat. And that dragon runs all the way down, his throat runs all the way down, all the way down, all the way down into his gut, which is here. This is his whole body, is right there. There's his head coming down, there's his body. And this is the tail. And you see the red stuff, that's all from, this is a red-blooded creature. And this is the dragon scales at the other end of his body, his tail. And this again is the runoff of dead, decaying bodily tissues and fluids in the desert. And there's still red blood coming out of this creature, out of his neck, where his throat was cut. And who cut his throat? They say it was Zeus. There's the red blood running out. And here it is right there. You see that green? Why is that green in the middle of the desert? I could tell you why. It's called blood meal. Blood makes things grow unbelievably green. Okay, so we go from the Big Bang to where we are today. What's different back then than it is now? Well, they're going to say everything started from a point in space which was smaller than an atom. Literally, that's what they say. And it expanded so fast that everything is just moving out into space away from this central point, which everything's moving away from us, they say. But I say, no, light is just slowing down. They say it's moving away. That's why the light is stretching out, it's shifting to the red, because the planets and everything is just expanding. I say, no, absolutely not. The particles coming to us through space are interacting with the particles in space, called the quantum foam. They're slowing it down. And I presented this to my professors at University of Tokyo, and they said, that's an interesting question. That's the last I heard. But this is going to be from the Big Bang to now. Now, here's what I want them to explain, and here's what I need to explain to myself. I can't explain it. This is the size of our Earth. This right here is a dragon. He runs all the way from there, all the way across North Africa. And there's the dragon's head. And you can come down here, you got Google Earth, you come and look at it. And what I want you to do is read Apollodorus 1.6.3. You hear that? Apollodorus 1.6.3. His red flaming eye. His head was so high up when he stood up it brushed the stars. His body was all unkempt and winged and fluffy and all, nasty looking. This is all the runoff from this dead, decaying dragon's body. This is his throat. And these are the scales that coated his throat. This is all runoff from the decay. These are the scales on his throat. You see that? These are armor-plated scales. And this is his throat, and it has a little look to it too. But these come all the way down, and this is going to go all for the whole distance. But his throat was cut. And here's where his throat was cut. Look at the size of this thing. And these are all dragon scales. Here's where his throat was cut, right across here. You see that? And this is blood running out in the desert. This is where he died. And that green is because blood makes everything grow very green. Right in the middle of the desert, why is it growing green there? Well, it's growing green because there's artery blood still coming out of that gash. And the rest of his body runs all the way over to the other side of North Africa. Way over to here, really, is his tail. These are some of the dragon scales at the other end of his body. These are dragon scales here. And these are the effluents that are running off of those. All right, this was a massive creature. And like I said, Apollodorus 1.6.3. We'll take a look at that, and it's going to talk about this exact creature. And he was also depicted on the maps from 1375. Now, how could this gigantic creature exist here? On top of this gigantic fish that's right here, that's a gigantic fish. Like I say, you have Google Earth. I'm not going to beat the dead fish. Or is it a dead horse? I go dead fish. I can't remember. But I'm not going to beat a dead dragon. I am going to go over here and show you another gigantic dragon, which is on the east coast of the United States, which is Quetzalcoatl. There's his head. Here's his feathered plume. And I'm talking feathers? Yes, feathers. Absolutely, no question, feathers. You want to see some feathers? Let's dig in here a little closer. First of all, you got to go back and look at the outline of his head. These are feathers. You see this? This is the stem of the feather right in the center here. You see it? That's feathers. That's a feather. That's just like this right here. And these are the little fluty things on the side of the feather. That's all it is. That's a feather, and there's another feather over here. And their feathers run all the way up the East Coast. This is his headdress. And this is exactly identical to what he looks like in the ancient codexes from the Mayans and so forth, or whoever did it, the Incas. And this is his head. That's why it's a different color than the surrounding stuff, because it's different scales. There's his beard that comes down. He goes all the way around, snakes all the way around, because they're basically reptilian, snaky, I don't know what they are, but they're dragons and giants. And it ran all the way up the East Coast, all the way up into Canada. This thing's gigantic, just like the other one. And these are the Green Mountains, and green is because feathers are just as good as blood. They sell feather meal to make things green because of the nitrogen content, and they sell blood meal to make things green because of the transition metals and nitrogen and all that that's in the blood. So if anybody can deny this, I'd like to have them deny it. This is his headdress. It goes all the way around here. You see all the green, 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 green? And that's exactly what it looks like. Now, how did these creatures fit on this earth? Was this earth the same size it is now? I can't believe it could be. To have this and then that one, and there's another one up here. They're all over the earth. They're all over the earth, and some of them were like snaky-looking things, gigantic dragon snakes. They're all over this earth, and this was written about in the ancient texts that the earth was made from monsters and gigantic dragons that wrapped all the way around the earth and might have an eyeball that would be the Gobi Desert, and it has a membrane, the membrane that runs right around the eyeball here. You see that membrane? And you see what's here? They're mining salt in his tears. These creatures were enormous, absolutely gigantically enormous, as you can see. This is the membrane of that dragon's eye. And that, I mean, all I can say is the Big Bang to dark energy. Let's talk about what about this. There's a lot to talk about in the middle here that nobody's ever wanted to talk about, and they still don't want to talk about it because it just blows everything out of the water for them. Explain these dragons to me. Explain how they could have lived here. What did they eat? This dragon standing up, his head would have been twice as tall as the space station. He'd be looking down at the space station miles down below him, hundreds of miles. And that's exactly what it says in the ancient texts. His head often brushed the stars. Okay, my friends, this is from the library of Apollodorus, who was in the 2nd century BC. He wrote these things. From all of the ancient texts that were written, he compiled this library. And it starts with the birth of Zeus and the war of the Titans, the Olympian gods. We come way up here to the war of the giants and Typhon. That's my area. Then we go to Prometheus and Deucalion. Prometheus was the one that brought us fire and all the things which God said, no, don't bring those down. Deucalion was Prometheus's son, apparently, is what the story is here. And he was Noah. And that's when all of this stuff fell apart and they had the great flood. Now this starts out with Sky was the first who ruled over the whole world, and having wedded the earth, he begat first the 100-handed, as they are named, and he gives all the names, who were unsurpassed in size and might, each of them having 100 hands and 50 heads. I mean, that's just crazy. Who would ever, nobody's going to believe that. Well, listen to this. This is the war of the Titans and Typhus, and Typhon. This is 1.6.3. All right, so let's go 1.6.3. When the gods had overcome the giants, earth was more enraged and had intercourse with Tartarus and brought forth Typhon. That's the hybrid between man and beast. That was the one that's in the desert. In size and strength he surpassed all the offspring of earth. As far as the thighs of him go, they were human-shaped, and of such prodigious bulk he outtopped all the mountains, and his head often brushed the stars. And then it goes to how gigantic he was, and from the thighs downward he had huge coils of vipers, which when drawn out reached to his very head and emitted a loud hissing. His body was all winged. Unkempt hair streamed on the wind from his head and cheeks. Fire flashed from his eyes. This is Apollodorus, and that's Typhon, and here is Typhon. Here's his head with all of the flashy stuff and winged and unkempt and so forth. Here's his red, flared, flashy eye. And here's where his throat was cut. All this is talked about. It's all written about in the ancient text. Zeus cut him with his great and mighty thunderbolts. Now, how did all this happen? Well, the ancient texts talk all about this. Even the Indian texts, the Mahabharata or Bhagavad Gita or something, I can't remember the names of these things, but there's all kinds of texts all over the world that refer to these things. Even the Bible talks about basically some of the very same things. Ovid, in Metamorphosis, says the gods turned the giants into landscape for their own purposes, for fun. And there's giants all over this earth that we thought were statues. They're not statues. They're actual giants that were petrified, and they could turn to stone. Listen to this. All right, look at this. This is Ovid. He wrote Metamorphosis, one of the best, biggest epics in history. He's talking about Perseus uses the Gorgon's head to turn people into stone. Listen to this. Phineus is turned to stone. They all deserve the punishment they suffered except one of Perseus's warriors. While he was fighting on his side, Aconteus saw the Gorgon's head that took the shape of hardened stone. Instantly, he turned into stone because he saw the Gorgon's head. Astyages struck him with his long sword, thinking he was still alive, and the blade gave a high-pitched ringing noise. While Astyages stood there amazed, the same power transformed him, and he remained there with a wondering look on his marble face. it would take a long time to tell the names of the middle ranks of men. 200 bodies survived the fight. 200 bodies were turned to stone at the site of the Gorgon's head. Now, these were the things that were written about, and I believe these are true. All right, this is Ovid, who wrote Metamorphosis, and these are all the different books. This was an epic. From the creation, the ages of mankind, flood, Deucalion, who is Noah, his wife Pyra, all the way down, all of the different monsters and all of the same things basically as Apollodorus. Now, his first opening lines was this: Metamorphosis is the transformation, unifying theme amongst the episodes of his Metamorphosis. Ovid raises its significance explicitly in the opening lines of the poem. It says, In nova fert animus mutatus decree formas corpora. I intend to speak of forms changed into new entities, accompanying the theme of often violence inflicted upon a victim whose transformation becomes part of the natural landscape. Listen to this. There is a great variety among the types of transformations that take place, from humans to inanimate objects like the Nile River, constellations, animals, from animals into ants, fungi, mushrooms, humans, different sexes and hyenas, and colored pebbles. I mean, anything, they could change into anything they wanted because they were literally gods. They could transform matter. Medusa, all that stuff was true. They could turn people to stone. It's just what it is. Well, they're going all the way up from the Big Bang all the way up to today. Well, in the middle, there was all these sea monsters. Where did all the sea monsters come from? These are representations of the sea monsters that were around Iceland. Now, I looked at Iceland very carefully. Let me tell you something. 100% biology. These were the creatures that were living inside the body of whatever it was that was Iceland. And when Iceland died, the creatures had to go make a living. They swam out into the ocean and attacked boats and ships and so forth. That's what all these sea monsters were. They were all over the world, and they had pictures of them everywhere. These are almost identical to what it looks like in our bodies. Extremophiles, they call them. They live in salts and acids and bile and all of that stuff where extreme conditions. And once the thing died, they no longer had their nutrition. They all sort of went out through the body fluids into the ocean and started searching for things to attack, and ships were about the best thing they could attack because these things were enormous. They were absolutely enormous. They were bigger than whales and so forth because inside of this creature could easily accommodate them. As you saw, it could easily accommodate, well, if the thing's 1,000 miles long, the dragon, and here's Iceland. I was just scoping Iceland out. It's 100% biology. And all of those creatures started roaming around looking for food. And just think about how big the creatures that would be inside their bodies would be. Their bodies would have cavities inside of here that they actually found caves. They formed clouds inside. They're so big. And that's what this thing would be. He's standing... It's 1,000 miles. Even if one of the cavities was a half a mile, think of the size of the creatures that could be in there. And that's only a half a mile. They're going to be ones that are going to be 10 miles long and miles deep. That's what happens when the bodily fluids and the cavity stuff flows out. Now, we saw the red blood coming out of here. And we saw the green growth come because of the red blood. Here it is right there. And the same thing on the East Coast, completely saturated with growing greenness because of the feather meal from Quetzalcoatl. You see this? Feather meal is a slow release, while blood meal is a fast release nitrogen source. If you need blood meal, it gives it real quick, instantly pops it up green. The feather meal just stays longer and longer and longer. Okay, so if we're going to go from the Big Bang to dark energy, we better address this right here, which is Typhon. Here he is right here. Runs all across North Africa. That's the dragon in the desert. And not only is he in the desert, with all his dragon scales, his throat is cut. They knew about this in 1375, this map was made of all of the known lands. And Typhon is here with his throat cut. It looks like they knew that Atlantis had been here at one time as well. All right, so that's one tip-off. Now the other one is Icelandia. All right, then they drew these maps of where these gigantic creatures were being found. And some of them maybe were coming out of the pancreas and they were over in this area. Some of them may be coming out of the rectum, and they were over in that area. It's just wherever they were living, and then they flowed into the ocean. This is a 10-foot long, 10-foot wide map. This is the biggest map, I guess, in the world. Now, they claim a lot of things about this. If you wrapped it around at the bottom and all these pinched back together, it would be a globe. Now, the Earth now, there is no question whatsoever. The Earth right now is a globe. The space station is the space station. It is out there. It can be seen with a telescope. It's not something that is cartoons. I can show that what happens to water in space is it turns into a ball. Okay, here it is, Typhon. As far as the thighs go, he was of human shape. That's an interesting thing to say, but it's true. Here's his thighs, and then he had coils running down. This is muscle tissue, and I can show you it's muscle tissue. You see that? Those are muscle tissues. That's all muscle tissue. They didn't form like that for nothing. That's muscle tissue that has eroded. And what eroded away from it was the skin. Where's the skin now? It's right here. That's where the skin is eroded off. You see this? If you took this picture right here to a guy that did leather tanning, he would say, yeah, that's leather. That's leather. That's a hide. Which it is. It's the hide from the creature's body. People are living here in the bloody runoff. You see that? Those are all people living there. Because that's where there's a lot of fleshy, bloody runoff. And then you turn into the leather that is on the side. Now, this side came out fairly well patterned. You see it? It's only all pinched up right here. But in between his legs, okay, in between the two legs, one leg's here and one leg's here, this is higher up than that one. So he's sort of laying on his side, and this is down below. But right under between here is a pinched leather from this and a pinched leather from that, and it's piled up. You see how it's darker looking here than it is over here? Well, when you get down and look at it close, it's just all bundled up. You see it? It's not like the other side at all. Totally different because it's all patched together. You see this? This is muscle. Now, this is a lot of eroded. It's eroded quite a bit. I'm not saying it's just like brand new, but this is how they feed the muscle with blood. This is all blood feeding these muscles. And then these muscles would pull in, and the guy would run and jump and do all kind of crazy things. Who knows what they did? But this thing is very, very, very large. And his thighs were of human shape. All right, when they talk about the thighs of Typhon being like a human, there they are. And what happens is when he was laying on there, some of these eroded away, so you see these muscle bands sort of eroded, but you can see there obviously the patterns of them. They're all over the place. You see this? This is the Statue del Gigante. It's a giant, and this is the kneecap. Now, pay close attention to this. This is the tendinous material that runs up right across the kneecap. You see this piece that goes up here? That strap running right up there? You see the look of it right here? Let me show you something anatomically. Now, don't forget, in addition to that look, which I will show you exactly identical, plus the shoulder and the muscle and the bone attachment and all that is also anatomically exact, and all of this red blood and so forth running down from this leg tendon is from a creature's body. Now, they tried to fix this thing. They put some rebar in him and everything. It didn't work. And he is what he is. Now, here's what the legs look like. Look at this. This is the same exact stuff. Not only that, I could show you the kneecap in its actually exactness. All right, don't forget, watch this. Remember this little spot right here. This side comes down for its own sort of tendon. It runs up to this here. Then the major tendon runs up and basically under that, which forms your kneecap. Watch this. All right, go back and look if you need to, but there's like two tendons. One comes up this way and runs off. This one goes back. The kneecap sits right underneath this little hook. That's what a kneecap is. You see this? This is the kneecap right here. This is the tendon that comes up. It's got that little hook to it. And it runs off to this side, and the kneecap sits right basically under it to the left of it. Okay, so let's wrap it up. I know this is jarring. I've been told my stuff is jarring, and I can see, yes, it is. Because nobody ever expected this. I was the last one in the world to expect this, trust me. It's jarring. But if they're going to address from the Big Bang, from everything created from nothing, which it's here, so I can't tell you how it got here. I have no clue, no idea. But I do now believe that there were gods and there are gods and God-ish creatures that have those powers. And I'm trying to find my... Oh boy, this is tough to talk about because everybody's got to find their own way. They got to find their own meaning in life, and what is there going to be an afterlife? What's going to happen? Some people, no religion whatsoever. I was that way for a very long time. Now I'm totally opposite. I realize now that this stuff is all real. The things they talked about were real, and they were talking about very, very bad, nasty creatures, and that they would exist basically forever. And the only thing I could think of right now is Jesus Christ was the one that he had the stage for a very short while, and they slaughtered him so that his life would be known and remembered for his bravery and his courage and his ability to reach people. And was he the Son of God? You have to make that up yourself. You have to make that decision yourself. Is he the only Son of God? I'm a son of God. Everybody is a child of God. Was Jesus Christ God's only son? I can't believe that's true because everybody is an offspring of God. So, you know, that's kind of hard to talk about, but he was certainly enlightened, and everything that I have discovered about Jesus Christ supports the things they said about him. Now, this is the other things, though, that they said in the ancient texts. It was all written about. And I didn't write them. And they wrote about turning these creatures into giants, giants first of all, and then into stone. They just turned them into stone. They were actual creatures when they did it. They were giants. They did it just for fun. And I could see all the biology in it. I understand the biology extremely well. And there's no question. That's biology right there. That's the guy's leg. That's his kneecap. This is the tendon that goes up. And this is the little hook that goes up. There's tendons and muscles and bloody areas all over the place. And I fully understand the anatomy. Nobody would make it like that. Nobody would build it like that. This was locked in stone, just like Phineas. Remember when I talked about being able to turn them into mushrooms and all kinds? Look at this thing. What the hell is that? And look at this guy. He's going, oh, what did you do to me? Look at this. What is all this stuff? He's saying, oh, wow. And they did this, and then they put them in art galleries and so forth, made gardens out of them. It's what they wrote, and it certainly is what I see. And this is what makes everything possible, is the transition metal complexes that were in this salty, hot water situation. It invaded the tissues, and they didn't rot. They got invaded in a thing called nucleophilic substitution. I suppose I should throw a couple of videos in about that. Okay, as I was talking before, hot saltwater floods, nucleophilic transition metal reagent. Reagent just means it's a reactive molecule. And that molecule is sodium tetracarbonyl ferrate -2. That is a very invasive nucleophilic transition metal reactive part. And that's why I'm always talking about nucleophilic transition. And it's always in salt water, sodium. Like I said, so I showed you about the transition metals. This is what I'm saying. This is this perxovites and these organic solar cells. They can literally spray them on like spray paint as these films roll by, and all these different layers pick up different intensities of light. And that's what we would have right there to pick up this extremely high energy photons. Well, actually, they're electron neutrinos here. They're strictly the white part. The black stays behind. The white part would pulsate down through the photodiode into here, and we'd have free energy. And this would pick up, right now they got it like 70%. That's huge. And I showed you that they achieved 200%. Right here, they achieved, using this perxovite and organics, they achieved 200%. Impossible light sensor efficiency of 200%. Just came out a couple days ago. And it's exactly what I'm talking about here.